Hello everybody and welcome back to a brand new video. Now throughout the years, Jagex has removed quite a few training methods from the game. I've gone over some already. Today's video is going to be the third installment. Now training methods are often removed when new updates are released and the experience rate is not close to the pulled rate. Now sometimes people discover brand new methods that make existing training methods way too strong, and other times training methods are removed for no good reason. Now today I'm going to be showing you a few interesting pieces of Runescape history and a few of the more interesting methods that ended up being removed from Runescape and old school Runescape. Anyway guys, I hope you enjoyed the video and let's get started. Now the first unintentional training method here is one that I am really familiar with. I pretty much used it right from the release date of the content all the way until it got patched. Now what I'm talking about is the Hespori training method. Now this was really interesting and something that I very quickly discovered when I was running my farming guild only account. Now because my account was restricted to the farming guild, there wasn't really a good method to train combat stats or ranged. However, I eventually realized that I could actually grow a Hespori plant, and furthermore, I could kill the flowers that spawned with it and just run out of the fight and reset it. Now, I was definitely not the person to discover this method, but I did use it for quite a while. Now, the reason this method was somewhat unintentional and better than it would normally be is the way that the Hespori flowers worked. At the start of the fight, and usually midway through, Hespori will spawn 4 individual flowers for you to kill. Now, the flowers have 10 hit points and award a normal amount of experience. Now what was really interesting about them though is when they were released, they had 10 hit points and you would always hit a 10 regardless of your combat level, regardless of your max hit, regardless of your accuracy. You'd always hit a 10 and be awarded with 40 experience in a related combat skill. So if you were level 1 ranged with a bronze arrow, you would always hit a 10, even if your max hit at the time was 1. Now this was very strange, but it actually made for a really good training method specifically for ranged. If your Ironman for some reason had a very low range level and you had access to the farming guild, at level 1 you could get actually around 30k ranged experience an hour, which is way better than anything else at that level. Essentially what you do is you would enter the fight, you would attack each of the flowers, so 4 of them, gain 40 experience, run back outside, and then re-enter the fight. Every time you left the fight and re-entered it, the instance would restart and the flowers would be back. Now if you did this with melee, you'd get a bit less experience per hour, somewhere between 20 and 25k, just because you had to run between the flowers more. But at level 1, getting 30k experience an hour was unheard of at the time, and definitely an unintentional byproduct of a kind of weird mechanic choice. Now unfortunately, and to my great disappointment, after a couple of months, this method was actually patched out. I was very disappointed at the time and I couldn't really understand why, because really the people who would take advantage of this would be a very niche set of accounts, because for one you need to get to the farming guild, have 65 farming, grow a Hespori plant, and still have a very low range level. I mean, like, that probably doesn't apply to that many people. And in the end it was actually a fairly click intensive method as well, but they did end up removing it and I was very sad. Okay, next up here we actually have a training method from RuneScape 2. And I find this so fascinating. For those who have been around for a long time, you may actually remember that for a while, the best training method for magic in the entire game was the charge spell. Kind of weird, right? The charge spell just being the god spell from the Mage Arena, not a very highly used spell today. Now charge was a level 80 magic spell that essentially just improved the effectiveness of god spells, improving them by about 30%. Now sometime before 2009, someone discovered that the charge spell was actually the best magic training method in the entire game, and by a substantial margin. Now the reason that this was the case is because back in 2009, you were actually able to cast this with no tick delay at all, which means you could spam the spell very quickly and in a multitude of locations. Now the only video evidence I could find was somebody doing it in Castle Wars, however they're just there for fun. The charge spell exploit at the time could be done anywhere. Now the charge spell gives 180 experience, which isn't really out of line for a spell that level, but because there was no delay, you could cast it a ridiculous amount of times every hour. Now a human could probably do 17,000 to 18,000 casts per hour. A bot could do way more, but well, that's botting. Now if you do the math and you had the money to afford this, you could get about 3.2 million magic experience per hour. Now in some ways this kind of reminds me of the heal other spell, but one thing we have to keep in mind here is the charge spell is a level 80 spell, which makes it way more powerful. You were actually able to do that for the majority of your magic experience, as level 80 magic was roughly only 1/7 or 1/6 of the way to max, which means once you hit level 80, you could theoretically get max in probably about 4 hours. Now obviously this method had a few drawbacks, the main one being the cost. At the time, blood runes were somewhere between 600 and 1000 GP each, which means casting this once would cost somewhere between 2,000 and 3,000 gold per cast, which is very, very expensive. This was so expensive in fact that it would cost about 35 mil an hour to do this method, and the GP per XP would be about 11. Now if you compare that to today's standards, that is an expensive method, but it's not outrageous. Getting 99 magic with this method would cost you like 150 mil or something. Definitely expensive, but in the realms of possibilities. But back in 2009, that was a lot of money. Now eventually this method was patched into the game. They added in a pretty significant delay, and in RS2 the actual spell was eventually removed in 2012. Now the next unintentional training method is one that is very recent. And for a couple of days, I wasn't really sure whether this was intentional or not, but Jagex has since confirmed by nerfing it that they didn't really mean for that to be a training method. No, I'm talking about the Blister woodcutting training method that was introduced with the new Sins of the Father quest on June 4th. Now the Blisterwood tree apparently was something that was mainly only supposed to be used for the quest. It's located at the end of the quest, and the logs really only have one purpose, and that is to make the Blisterwood sickle, although you can burn them, so I guess they're pretty much just as useful as most of the other logs. Now what's kind of unique about the Blisterwood tree is that it does not disappear from chopping, as there's only one located in the entire game and multiple people need to chop it to complete the quest. It actually never will get chopped down. With that said though, you will occasionally just stop, which means you can't actually AFK there until you get a full inventory. It just doesn't work that way. Now when the content was released, the Blisterwood tree would actually give you 76 experience per log, and was chopped at a very quick rate, so much so that at level 99 woodcutting, you could actually get around 75k woodcutting experience per hour, which is actually really good considering it was really only meant to be a tree used in one single quest. Now with that said though, the Blisterwood tree was really just a middle of the pack training method. Even at level 62 woodcutting, there were still better options at that level, mainly teak trees. So it definitely was not overshadowing existing methods, and it did offer a kind of more relaxed, fun, and I guess kind of more social method to train woodcutting because there's only one tree located in the entire game, so everyone would congregate there. Another really interesting thing about this somewhat unintentional method is that at the release, the high alch value of the Blisterwood logs was actually 300, which made them profitable to alch while you were there. So if you wanted to sacrifice a bit of woodcutting experience for magic experience, you had the option to do that, and you would actually be making a bit of money at the same time. Now this method existed in the game in its current state for about 1 week, however after that time period Jagex decided to nerf it. Now they didn't remove it altogether because well they still needed the tree, but they did nerf the experience rate as well as the high alchemy value on the Blisterwood log. The experience rate got reduced from 76 to 52, and the high alch value was decreased from 300 to 120, making it no longer profitable. Now the reason that Jagex ended up kind of axing this method mainly had to do with the fact that it was not a pulled method and was kind of added somewhat unintentionally. I do think there is a pretty good chance that with a poll, the community would agree to revert the nerfs on this method to once and for all and state it as an official training method that was intentionally added. Okay, and the final unintended training method here is more of an augmentation to an existing method, but it does create one of the highest experience training methods in the entire game, and it currently still is in the game. It hasn't been patched out, and I think mostly to do with the fact that it has such a high requirement to do. Now what I'm talking about is the dancing alt chinning method, if that makes any sense. Now the reason the requirement is so high for this is you actually need 3 accounts to train one account effectively, which means you need to complete Monkey Madness 2 or at least start Monkey Madness 2 on 3 separate accounts. Now most people don't want to put in the time to make 2 new accounts that have access to Monkey Madness 2 because that's a huge waste of time. You'd be better off just training your main account here. Now essentially what this does is it gives you the highest experience rate possible while being totally AFK. Now without the 2 alt accounts, it is possible to get the same experience rate, however you will have to be paying attention a lot more. You'll have to be clicking pretty much every second, running back and forth to stack the monkeys up correctly. However, with the 2 accounts running back and forth, you won't ever have to do that, and you can literally just stand in one spot with auto retaliate on and just wait there for 10 minutes without doing anything. Now essentially the way this method works is you run in there with the 2 alt accounts and you wait until you lose aggro. Now after 10 minutes, you have one account follow the other one, and if you do it correctly, you'll get kind of an interesting dancing animation where the two accounts are running back and forth. Now this actually will displace the monkeys and not allow them to get stuck together, which means when you have your main account here attacking, the monkeys are always going to stack up perfectly onto one square. You're always going to be attacking the maximum amount of monkeys at once, and you won't ever have to move any of your accounts. Now, I'm not sure exactly when this method was discovered, but it was popularized in 2018. And while this is definitely just a clever use of existing mechanics, I do think it's definitely an unintentional training method, as chinning wasn't really meant to be that AFK. Anyway guys, that is going to be it for today's video. Those are 4 training methods that Jagex never really intended to be in the game. If you have any other training methods that I have not got around to mentioning in my 3 videos so far, let me know with a comment down below. I'm always curious to learn more. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.